Start it off. Members of our Board of Education, welcome to our kind of almost a budget workshop, our board workshop. And this is a follow-up, if you remember, I believe in the spring, that we had in May. Thank you, Mr. Smith. And we had Mr. Brown and Mr. Smith and Ms. Stumpenhouse, who's the LPPC co-chair, and it was the request of the board to take a deeper dive into employee stipends. So that is exactly what we're going to do today, and so I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith and Ms. Stumpenhouse, and we'll let everybody get started.
Thank you guys for being here. I believe where we should start is we can just go through a brief overview of kind of the work that's been done that was discussed in the last board workshop whenever we brought this information before the board the first time. And then we can kind of pick up with where we are and then where we're going and provide any sort of clarity that the board might have in regards to the way we have looked at this process and the way we have walked down this path of kind of chewing this elephant, as we so say. But with that being said, since I've been here, the question of stipends and these different pieces associated with athletics and non-athletic stipends has been a conversation. And so our stipends are very antiquated. There hasn't been a lot of work done to them, and they are not set up in a way to where they grow by themselves. And so if the board will recall in the original board workshop whenever we met in May, the way a lot of individuals are set up in other districts is that they are set up with a stipend schedule that is off the teacher base salary based on an index, and that index allows for growth as you give raises to your standard salary schedule. And so with that type of method, you don't find yourself in this situation to where your salary or your salaries have been touched, but your stipends have not been touched. They are treated the same because they are linked. And so when you address one, you address the other, and whatever money you have set aside for raises, you include the stipend adjustments in those raises so that it just takes care of itself as you grow, as your salary schedule grows. Yes, ma'am.
That index, is that multiplied times what?
So generally, it's right now it would be the $50,000, which is the LEARNS Act base
The base salary.
and that's what it is on our schedule. It's that lane 1, box 1 on the teacher salary schedule. Any other points of clarity? Okay, and so that's kind of where we've been. Ms. Stumpenhouse came, and me and Brian and Ms. Stumpenhouse spoke to you guys in the May meeting about where our headspace was. Ms. Stumpenhouse and all the individuals on the LPPC that were part of the stipend committee really took it head on. They dove into the data in regards to different school districts, where they were. We did comparisons. I believe Coach Ballon spoke about some of this as well, but a good example that we have used is like the Bryant model. And so that seemed to be an all-encompassing kind of one-pager, simple, based off an index. They had some pieces that we didn't have, and we had some pieces that they didn't have. But for an overarching model, that's kind of the way we looked at it. Then we went to comparing what our salary schedule is and where we rank in regards to our stipends by comparing ourselves to similarly situated districts. And so that's where we've been. Where we are right now is we are going through the process of adjusting any changes that transpired from last year to this year whenever you guys received this information. And we are still using the rationale of the comparison piece to creating a stipend schedule that fits what we need at North Little Rock and also allows us to be financially and physically responsible. So that's where we are. I don't know if Ms. Stumpenhouse wants to add anything, or Brian or Coach Ballon would like to add anything, or Dr. Paluski. But that's where we have been. That's where we kind of went through last year. and that has led us to where we are. And really, I would like to jump into the meat of the whole conversation today, if that's appropriate. Okay, you have anything you'd like to add?
Sure. On the non-athletics part, and that's the part that I gave you a copy of, I have updated that completely with new employees that left as of 23-24 and new employees that we have for this school year. So that one's completely updated with new people based off of the records we have current in the office. So these numbers are current and real with real names on them. There are a couple of questions that I have just that I don't know necessarily all the answers to, and so there's some question marks, and there's a few comments that I still don't have complete understanding of, and we do have some positions that aren't filled right now that we may leave these on here, because as long as we have them on the stipend index or the list of them, then we can fill them in the future if we decide that that's what we want to do.
Okay. Can I stop you before we go any further?
Sure.
And just have you explain to me just this first line. You have 5 days, value of days, which is 263 per day. How did you get 263.15 per day? How did you come up with that?
The way you come up with that is you take our base salary, $50,000, you divide that by 190 days, which is what we do for your contract days, and you come up with $261.15.
263.15. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So then you have what the additional duties are, like the middle school band, and the amount of $3,050. Is that what they're getting paid now?
That is the current stipend amount.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're saying we need to add 5 days for a total of 46.
Hold on just-
43.65.
Let me clarify.
Okay.
This first page is current, what they're currently paid. That's no recommendations of anything. So right now, B. Murdy has 5 additional days on his or her contract at a value of $13.15.79 plus the stipend amount of $30.50. When you add those two together, you get $4,365. That's what that person currently makes this school year.
So that's a 195 contract is what I'm hearing.
That is a 195 contract.
Yep.
And those 5 additional days, that would grow based on the salary schedule. Does that make sense? That stipend amount, so
if
5 additional days,
Yeah.
if you're beyond the $50,000, so like let's say we're at 51, then that's the number that's used to divide by 190, and that calculates the daily rate of pay. So that value grows as you move down the salary schedule, either in years or education.
Got it.
So if you have 20 years in the district, you're not making $50,000. Let's say you're making our top 61.4. So you would take 61.4 divided by 190 days, and so the value of it is more.
Got it. On it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So we currently use no index with
No,
non-athletics.
we have no indexes in our current
Flat
schedule.
rates.
So these amounts have not been adjusted for decades.
15 years.
Yeah.
So we get just clarity there. We have no indexes in the additional duty schedule. We do have indexes.
Oh, that's true. In like principals and administrative
That's
duties.
true,
That's
yes,
right.
yes, yes,
That's right.
Administrative additional duty that's actually it says a percentage on our salary schedule. That is an index. We do have indexes for the administrative additional duties, but the additional duty sheet that has specifics amounts, there are no indexes on that.
Right.
So
we
just
have
this
a
top,
combination of both.
just this top sheet.
That's right.
That's it. They have no index.
Right. So
But
this
theirs has been static every year.
right.
Okay.
This has been, these are the ones that we currently have. And so that's just your first page. The value of stipends that are non-athletic is without any kind of, benefits or things like that. The value, cash value is $76,713.42. Now, hold on. It's a little bit more. I didn't drag over the band director because I had a question about the 2 band directors. That was a change I made last night. So my question was, we have 2 band directors that were hired this year that weren't here last year for 9th and 10th grade. I didn't know, you're telling me now that the reason that one is different is because this person came late, they were hired late, and so their salary is only based on a 171-day contract, not 190, so I didn't know the answer to that till right before the meeting. So I need to move those 2 numbers over to the side, which if the band director for 9th and 10th grade, this Christopher Crutchfield, he is not listed with any extra days on his contract, which, and neither is A. Montgomery. So if that's the case and that's not a mistake, then we would just move those numbers over to the right and add them to 76,000. So that would put us at around 83,000.
Okay, so my next question is, why are some have extra days and some do not?
So we would function off of the stipend schedule to apply the extra days. Oftentimes what happens is that, let's say you're on a 195, those 5 extra days would be at the beginning of the year. So in our system, if you started late and you have a prorated contract, you missed out on the benefit of those 5 days because you were not an employee whenever they were applied.
The following year,
You would
when
receive-
they would work during that summertime, their full new contract, their new contract for the full year would include the 195. They just weren't hired and didn't have the opportunity to work those additional 5 days during the summer.
But I don't think that was her question. I think am I
Yeah.
incorrect that you're just curious as to why some people get extra days?
Yes, like why do some who are getting extra days for their stipend and some aren't getting, it seems like this is a hybrid here. I mean, if, I already don't like this because.
Well,
I mean, and I-
this is the way it is today.
I know.
Yeah,
And-
I didn't
and
come up with this
okay.
idea.
And let me, before I say anything else, I want to tell you, I really, really appreciate all the work y'all have done, because I
Oh,
know
yes,
how much work this
100%.
is, so,
Yes.
No, this
So-
is just the state of affairs today.
Correct.
yeah. This,
So we don't like
yeah.
it.
So allow, I guess, Brian to kind of speak to,
So
since
I
he's got the most
I can
tenure.
tell you sort of the history behind that, even though, no one in this room was involved in making it up. The additional days versus just an additional money amount has to do with the type of work the person would do. So if someone had responsibilities where they would actually work off contract during the summer or during a break, that would be additional days. We compensate for the days actually worked off contract. If I'm the Beta Club sponsor or national, some other type of sponsor, and my responsibilities are only for after-school work, then I would have a monetary add-on and not days, because that didn't require working outside of my contract.
Okay.
So that's sort of been the gauge in the past, is how do we fund the position? Is any work required while they're off contract? They would add days, and we'd say, how many? And they'd say 5, so it'd be a 5-day additional contract because they're working off contract. And then if there was additional time worked after a contract day, but they're still on a contract day, that would be the additional money add-on.
Okay, all right.
But the
And-
people that were asking for extra days would have to go to a stipend committee to ask for that. It's not like somebody would just say, oh, we need 5 more days. It
That's
didn't
correct.
work that way.
And-
They had to
And people,
justify.
and we've had requests that have come through where people ask for additional days when they didn't work off contract, but they saw positions that had those day add-ons, and it just wasn't clear to the person requesting them. And of course,
Yes.
that the committee then may say, we're not going to add days, but we may add additional money to the position because that wasn't the right add-on.
Yes.
And so to give the board some clarity from an HR perspective, even with individuals that work outside of the 190, our extra days do not align. And so, I mean, anybody driving by the high school can see that the entire coaching staff of the football team is practicing all summer. Well, the assistant coaches get 10 extra days. Now, they receive a stipend as well, But I believe, without knowing the full history of how we are where we are, is that both mechanisms were used to garner extra compensation for these positions at one time, and it has led to these types of conversations of, if I get 10 extra days, then why am I up here practicing all summer? And then we have to go down the conversation of, well, you receive a stipend for that, you're getting a stipend, a flat rate for the work, but what it should be is that it should be a stipend amount for the job that you perform. The stipend should fit the job, and then the athletic director and HR should communicate, this is the work that is expected for said jobs and this compensation.
So, okay, following up with that, so we spoke of band on that first line. So band stipend days are 5 additional on this particular individual. So that means last Saturday, that person was in Cabot at the marching contest.
Yep.
And this Saturday, she will be in Bryant at an additional marching contest.
Yep.
And then we have regionals, which we're making, and then we have state, which we are making. So
Yes,
there's
ma'am.
4 out of 5 days that are Saturdays that she will be participating in to earn her stipend. Am I on the correct?
5 days.
Yes.
Yeah, that would
earn
be
her
her
5
extra
days
days.
on that. Okay. All right. Just want to make sure we're on the path.
Now, I think in the past, there has been some discussion that we haven't really known about how people could use those days so that they don't have to just come in for an extra 5 days randomly in the summer when they've already put in the time throughout their season. So I think that that's part of the discussion I know Coach Balam wanted to do, is to just honor those times that people are already putting in. And we want to do the same thing for our band and other folks as well.
Sure. So along that thinking, are you thinking, so like if we stay after hours, like last night we had practice from 5 to 8, is that what you're thinking along that? Huh?
That would be when the stipend kicks in.
Right. That's what I'm
not
looking
the
for
day.
clarification.
And
Yeah.
all of it should be stipend based. The extra days, the Saturdays, those things, we should create a value that is representative of the work, but we have got to get away from, well, these are the 5 days that HR is defining, which are the first 5 days before everybody gets back on contract, which are the extra days, but you might not be needed during that time.
Exactly.
And so the 5 days is just used as a means of compensating above and beyond what the standard contract does. But what should be done is the stipend should cover the work.
So softball is a spring sport, so we really don't need to see softball at the first 5 days of August, because their 5 days are going to be more towards February, March.
They don't
But
get any
softball's a 190 contract, so they don't even
Yeah, I threw
receive.
that out for a reason.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
What we need to get away from is thinking about how many extra days do we need to give somebody. Just they do extra work, and so we're going to figure that in a stipend.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I would
That's
like
right.
to say,
Judge.
and-
Because, go ahead.
because what you have is, you have I'm talking about in the athletic world, most of our coaches, I would go to say 99.9%, if not 100%, all work well beyond what
Agreed.
the number of days they get. I mean, a football coach alone is here every day in the summer. The head coach is on 240, but the assistants are on 200.
Right.
But they're going to be here, so we got 2 choices. Either we're going to have one football coach with our whole football team, because he's compensated, or all those coaches are going to come up here to support because they're coaches and because that's what's best for kids. But they're not, they're not actually. They get 10 days to use, and that goes really fast. Softball, the spring sports, softball, soccer, baseball, they're like a regular teacher. They get no extra days. So when they come up here in the mornings and work out, or if they do something on a Saturday, they're doing it because they love kids and they love their job. They're not compensated. And there is going to be some of that, but like Jacob was saying, if there's a mechanism to include, to compensate them holistically for the job, instead of just saying, because like and I've talked to some ADs, and what they do is they get a calendar and say, here's your calendar. Everybody gets a blank calendar. Tell me what days I should see you. You come check in with me on June 30th at 8 a.m. and you sign out at whatever time. And then after you get 10 days, you sign a piece of paper that says, now if I come, it's because I feel I want to.
Okay, that was gonna be my next question, because we're doing days, but are they really there all day long in the summer? I mean, are they not just there in the morning doing I mean, and that could be anything,
Kinda
you know, you got a
depends.
whole day when you may be going to a meet that last 2 hours for that day, that Saturday morning, costs you 2 or 3 hours. I mean, I don't like the whole days thing.
And I do think from our discussions, we're wanting to get away from the days thing.
We are.
That we would like to just kind of eliminate that and say the value of this position is this.
This is what is fair compensation for the work that's being done. Now, there is kind of a fluid conversation, and I would love any feedback from the board in regards to experience within these pieces. And I'm willing to have that conversation, because that makes sense, right? But what doesn't make sense is somebody that has 20 years on the salary schedule and is walking into an assistant coach position for the first time ever in their life, and they're going to get compensated more than somebody that might have been a coach for 5 years, but because they're further down. Do you see what I'm saying? And so that's where our mindset has been, is there might be a growth mechanism embedded in this that allows for experience to count for experience in the job that you were doing.
Because, like, for example, like, coach, we got a brand new first year football coach. He makes the exact same stipend as Coach Sandover, who's been here for 38 years. Coach Calvin, who's been here for 30 plus years.
Stipend.
Their stipend is exactly the same. It's $46.90. You know, now their teaching is going to be they're on the different part of the salary schedule, but like the coaching stipend is exactly the same dollar for dollar.
Yeah, I was already gonna circle back around to that. I don't really like that the stipend is tied to where they are on the salary schedule. I think it'd be better to say this is where it is, and then we could have a step 1, 2, or 3.
Like a 1 to 4 years experience,
Yeah.
5 to 9,
Yeah.
and then 10 plus, something like
Yeah.
that. I had explored that in the first work I did with this.
Well, going back to the non-athletics, there are a couple of people, I think, on here that, in the notes somewhere, that some people are getting not getting a stipend, even though it's in the policy. Is that correct?
Okay, just let's talk specifics. Tell me which one you're looking at.
I know I've got so many things open here. Let me get over to it. Let's see. We had an Abernathy on yearbook and Jeff Riddle as coach. Did I see those correctly? That they're not getting a stipend for something that they are doing, or?
I know one of the individuals that you named absolutely is.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if it's just not updated on the sheet or.
So
Maybe
Abernathy,
I
let
was
me
looking at it.
explain what you're looking at here. I'm on page, like the middle page. The back side of the middle page. So Amy Abernathy, she's brand new this year. This is her first year here. She gets 7 days added to her contract, which is a value of $1842.11. Her stipend for the yearbook, and the reason why they ask for 7 days, I spoke to the old yearbook person, was she said she spent an additional at least 7 days doing senior pictures and senior things. And then the yearbook value is $1540, and so when we took those two and added them together, that value was $3382.11. The reason we put leave as is I made a spreadsheet, which I don't know if you guys can see. Oh, wait, I'm on the wrong one. I'm going to pull it over here to the side for yearbook, for example. There's a spreadsheet for each one of these. We did not do athletics. We did not do non-athletics the way we did athletics. In athletics, we only compared to Bryant. In all of these others, we compared to 6 schools. So I have all of the comparisons to high school yearbooks that I could find. So for instance, ours was the value of 3382. Conway just has an index for the value of 1750. They didn't have any, they don't do days. So ours is better than Conway's. Bryant, they get 3350. So ours is $32 better than Bryant's. Cabot's 3,000. So we're in the green. We pay more than all these other schools. So when I say leave as is, that person's not going to get a raise because we're already paying better than all these others.
We're comparable to others, is
That's
what
right.
you're stating.
That's right. We are the best paid in terms of yearbook that out of all these other schools. So there's
Okay.
going to be no additional cost to the district for that.
May I?
Somehow I thought that I saw some things in here where it said in the policy someone was supposed to get something and then they weren't getting something.
I think that is in there somewhere. I'd have to
I-
go back and dig to see
I may have just pulled up a
where that
wrong
is.
name on
And
that.
I'm
but
happy to go through each individual person because, like, for instance, Samuel Folks.
Can I just, yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to make a recommendation. I get all this as public information, but out of respect for our employees, if we're talking about a stipend, can we talk about what the stipend is rather than the employee's name?
Absolutely.
Just
Okay.
to be respectful of
Absolutely.
our employees. Thank you.
Absolutely. We,
If-
and thank you. That's a good reminder.
If we have somebody that it's in the policy, but they're not getting paid, then that is something that we could act on currently because it's
Absolutely.
not like we have to change a policy to do
Absolutely.
something,
I
right?
have not had anybody communicate that with my office.
Okay.
I mean, I have none of those right now. And so,
Okay.
There's a couple of things that do say that when we originally started brainstorming about stipends, we ask everybody, what stipends do we need that we don't have in our district right now? And so some things came up, and we did some research on them, and we would like to act on a couple of things and not act on a few other things that were mentioned. Just after doing the research, we didn't find that there was anything out there that would warrant us being able to do it. So what we really tried to do was to all of the decisions that we made, except for a couple, and I wanted to talk to you guys about the specific couple, is simply based on, let's look at these other schools, these 6 schools. Let's take the ones that have these positions and, to the best of our ability, come up with the average, see where we fall with the average, and make a recommendation to get to that average. That was the fairest thing I could think of to try to make a recommendation based on data. So if, for instance, if you look at our esports person, we currently have a person who is doing esports, but he doesn't make anything for it. There is no stipend for esports.
like,
I'm not the one to ask. I really don't know.
it's like gaming teams and
Correct.
things of that
It's
nature.
accepted, it's accepted by the AAA.
Correct.
There are
Scholarships.
There are scholarships. There are, in fact, if you remember, take you all the way back to our students that did the presentation on the solar panels. If you remember that, they went to somewhere up near Searcy. I can't remember that school district, but that school district used the savings to create an esports center in their media center. So it is a sport recognized by the AAA, and it is gaming. It's tied towards gaming. It's very popular across the United States.
Yes, and we have lots of kids involved in it, is my understanding. When I looked at esports at other districts, I keep going to my computer. Got too many computers here to look at. Too many mice. Esports, there it was. So when we look at esports, we don't currently have a program and that's making anything. Conway didn't have one. Bryant pays $3,000 for theirs. Cabot $1,200. Jonesboro $2,250. And so the average of those 3 comparisons was $2,150. So that was our recommendation, was $2,150. That we would take the value of $2,150. So we would say, we want this person to make $2,150. So we say $2,150 divided by 50,000 is an index of 0.043. And that's how we come up with the 0.043.
And when you look at Bryant's, it's like 0.034126. I mean, it's down to that specificity. And so that's how they are arriving at that index. They are picking a starting point just as we are, They are assigning a value, and then that value grows as your salary schedule grows.
Well, I do like that.
I do too. I like that.
But now I'm going to get picky.
Please.
Because when we're getting our comparisons, and, you know, I know how hard y'all have worked. I do. But some of these places, when we're getting an average, you know, their student enrollment is much higher than ours. And it's almost like we need to factor in what that is based on student enrollment. So it's really more pertinent to us.
Well, but think about this. When an employee is trying to decide where they want to come work, they're not looking at student enrollment. They're looking at who pays the best money. And so we have to be competitive, whether or not our enrollment is $500 or $600 off, or $600 kids off than some of these others. We still have to be competitive to try to recruit people to our school.
And we did that because, for example, like in athletics, Bryant, we looked at it, was 82. We're 80. They have 18% more in student enrollment. So we looked at everything at 82%
Okay.
as
That's-
well as a comparison.
But what happens when our enrollment goes up?
Well, so
But-
ride with me.
Okay.
Is the work is the same whether you are at North Little Rock or whether you are at Bryant. And so you want the salaries to be as competitive as your millage rate, all of these things allow, right? It's my job to adjust the staffing model based on the number of students we serve so that if there's only 100 kids on our football team and Bryant's got 200 kids, just for simple math's sake, that would justify double the amount of coaches. Their salary should be the same or as close as we can compare, but we're only going to have staffing for the number of students we serve.
That's
So
true.
that would be like if we, and we talked about this yesterday, maybe for a football team, we need one coach for every 15 players, for example, or whatever that looks like, so that you know what your threshold. So as you grow, it's very simple. Hey, we're now at 110. We need to add a coach because our, like you said, but if we go down and we're down to 75, we're going to have to look at moving some things around because we don't need that many people. But like you said, the work's the work and the job's the job. And in order to be competitive, you got to be able to, you can't be the lowest paying in the athletic world. You can't be the lowest paying district for coaches and expect to get talented coaches. So that, I think that's, but we did look at that it was 82% and looked at that just as a comparison.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm not trying to be ugly because I understand what you're saying. The work is the same. But, you know, I'd like to live in a certain home, but if I don't have the money to pay for it, you know, we still have to be able to fund it all. So I'm
Yes,
just
ma'am.
saying, you know, that we have to keep that in mind.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I agree too. And I would say, I think we have not on purpose because we have a lot less coaches in the athletic. We're way less than the people our size that we compete with. We don't have near as many people. So that theory really is holding true because we don't have we're not paying for as many coaches. So it does kind of go with, we're not overstaffed in, say, football compared to what our student, like, you can go to a game, I mean,
I think 18 coaches at Cabot
Yeah.
or something like that,
we've got 9,
and 9, 10. And so
but the game's still the game. We're still going to play
Yeah.
the same on the same
Right.
field, you know, and expect it to produce a certain product. So,
Okay, so I just wanted clarification for a second, because you stated, so we're using Bryant, we know North Little Rock, and I'm using 2023 numbers. 2023, we had 7,640 students in enrollment, according to the ADE. That's where I'm getting my information. So the ADE website. Bryant had 9,607 students. So what I'm hearing you say is you took in consideration the difference of what? Say it again?
whenever we did it, it was,
whenever we originally did it, I don't know if it ended up in the final form, but I think we fostered the conversation that we were going to have this conversation. And what Coach Ballon is saying is exactly what Ms. Temple was alluding to. The house payment
Right.
If I make 20% less,
Right.
or I earn 20% less, then my house payment probably needs to be 20% less in regards to a similarly situated family unit. So North Little Rock compared to Bryant, there's ways you can make it up. So less coaching, that allows you to keep less coaches. That allows you to keep the salary up here, right?
Yes.
Because you're not spending as much because you don't have as many people.
Right.
What
The
you're
other
saying makes
mechanism
total
is-
sense.
Yes, ma'am. And the other mechanism is that a lower stipend. What we would like to do is we would like to have competitive stipends and salaries. That's what we would like to do
Sure.
in our staffing model so that we still stay within budget. And that's where our headspace is. But we are more than open if we bring this back to the board in some semblance of a rough draft and anybody doesn't agree with anything, like 10%, 5%, like we can look at any of those mechanisms based on feedback from the board. But we want you guys to have a clear picture about the path we are walking down to get to a rough draft of where we're going.
So at the end of the day, basically you're saying that you want a competitive stipend so that if we needed the extra, we can entice them to come to us.
No, not necessarily. I just think that.
Well, to have it already in place in case we needed the extra.
Well, no, not necessarily. And I'll speak for athletics. My goal would be is for us to be as money-wise. If I'm a baseball coach and we're looking for a baseball coach and there's 3 positions, there's one in the county, there's one in Little Rock, and one in North Little Rock. I don't want us to be the lowest paying one. I don't need extra money to entice them. I just want to be comparable. So the reality is we're playing against Cabot, Bryant, Conway, the Little Rock School District, the Pulaski County School. So if we don't offer the same amount of monetary
They're gonna go
return,
somewhere else.
it's going to be right. They're going to go somewhere because times are tough. So it's not like, can we get this pot of money and get this coach? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we're just being competitive, and we, in turn, we're going to get. I believe that the other things that we're all doing together, that's the last piece that we can bring in a lot of talented coaches when we need them, when the time comes.
And likewise, we want the same thing with our teachers.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We've got to be competitive. If they're choosing between 3 school districts and we're the lowest, that's
Yes,
not
ma'am.
good.
But the only school district that does do a range of options is Fayetteville. And so no one else has that option. Like when you come here, you will fall on a certain place. And there won't be room to say, oh, we really want you, so we're going to give you some more money. That's not how
Right.
our schedule is written. And we don't propose for it to be.
Yeah, like some of those schools have like 10,000, 25,000.
Yeah, they create a range so that they have that ability to give you more if you've got more experience or something.
And without calling anybody out, there are other districts across the state that I've looked at that have like 262 contracts for head football coaches. I would be hard pressed to know a football coach that's working 262 days. I mean, that's not reality. Maybe they are, I don't know, but that's kind of the mind frame of other places in order to compensate these individuals, and we're wanting to get away from that. Like, so our teachers and our coaches and everybody grow at the same time.
So the range that you're talking about that Fayetteville has, that range is from the district money. It's not like they've got some benefactor out there that's saying, we'll give extra money if you need
It's
it.
in
or-
their salary schedule.
If it's
It's-
passed by the board,
It's in
then
theirs.
you guys would have the same ability to grant Dr. Paluski the autonomy based on experience, based on the type of work that somebody has done, a recommendation from Coach Ballon within the athletic world. There are some individuals that function on that that pivot scale, so that you grant the superintendent the autonomy to offer a salary based on the individual that is selected for the position, not so prescriptive. Much more corporate way of thought.
Right.
And that's
I have theirs with me right now. They have a range. Their head football coach ranges from its indexes from 1.3 to 1.6 index. So they have that autonomy to go anywhere between 1.3 to 1.6. Soccer coach 1.05 to 1.3. So
I hesitate to use that comparison with them where I understand the mindset, I understand the concept. I hesitate because that's a different tax bracket than what we are.
that's right.
And I'm trying to be careful with my words.
It creates a system as well where there is not clarity. And I think
It could cause problems.
it-
Yes.
if it's passed and approved and everybody on the board is comfortable with it, then it is defendable. But it does allow for questions to be asked in regards to, I'm in this position, I am in this position, tell me why. And from my perspective, I can go forth and say why, because we wouldn't assign something that is not proper. But by the same token, it still leads me to answering questions of why.
Well, we kind of got into that a few years ago, and that what caused a few messes that we've had to clean up. So I hesitate real cautiously with that right now.
Are there any other school districts in Arkansas that do that? Or is Fayetteville the only one that we know of?
Beyond the coaching schedule, yes, PCSSD, if you look at their administrator salary schedule, they do it, the individual makes this per hour or this per hour, and then it works out to a salary based on the number of days and all of those things. So, yes, the superintendent has the autonomy to place individuals that are defined on that administrator salary schedule based on experience, degrees, all of those things, but it's not a hard line rule. So there are other individuals that function under that train of thought.
There are a few extra positions that I just kind of wanted to mention that we don't currently have that I just want to make sure you guys are aware they're not currently positions, and we would like to recommend that we add them. One of which is the esports one. Another one is I would like us to rethink about the department chairs. We currently have those as a stipend, but as we eliminate MCLs from the buildings in this coming year, we may want to return to department chairs just as some incentive. So that may be something to think about. We currently have department chairs 3 through 5 with a rate of $600 a year. So that we haven't been using that, but it's there available should we decide that we want to go back to that model. We do have department chairs 6 through 8 and 9 through 12 right now, but actually no, we have no 6 through 8 department chairs. So that's just something to think about. Maybe if we don't use MCLs, that we could go back to that idea. We also did not have a middle school yearbook stipend, and we would like to add that one to a .02 index rate. We don't have deans, high school deans currently, and we would like to be able to possibly recommend an index for deans.
Yeah.
We have deans, we do not
Yeah.
have an
Stipends.
index for
Well,
deans.
I
An
have
index.
that circled because I want to know what are they doing outside of their normal day that would warrant.
So
stipend.
that would be the conversation, is that if there is an index added, then now you are responsible for the same activities that an individual that receives an index, such as an assistant principal, is responsible for. So football games, basketball games, plays, any of those things that we always have an individual from administration at, that would extend the arm of this conversation so that deans could be assigned for that type of work as well, outside of the bounds of their normal 8-hour day.
So let me pause you for a second
Yes,
because I
ma'am.
wanted clarification that it's my understanding that all of our deans hold coaching positions right now?
No, ma'am.
No,
I
ma'am.
don't think so.
We
So
have
no?
some at the middle school that are just deans.
Non-coaches?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But not even at the high school. Some
Correct.
are not coaches at the high school.
Correct.
We only have 2 at the elementary schools. One is at Ridge Road and one is at 7th Street, and then the 7th and 8th grade campus, and then the high school.
Okay.
Because at one point in time, I felt like, and maybe it was last year,
I think as we've kind of tried to align each dean with each academy, as we've grown academies to 6 academies, we started out with 2, then we went to 4, and then now we've gone to 6. That is specific to each one. But yes, in the early part of that, you were correct. They were dean. Matter of fact, I think I don't want to mention anybody's name,
Sure,
but
sure.
yes, they were paired with.
Okay, so we've gone away from that, and now we have non-coach deans.
Well, I would say we haven't gone away from it completely.
Well-
There are some that are still
They're not all coaches.
correct.
So now there is an autonomy of,
There's a
Yes.
balancing.
Yes, that's correct.
because I was just thinking if they had to do an additional duty, say at a game, and if they're a coach, that's going to be almost impossible if they're on the field or they're on the court. So that's why I was inquiring for clarification.
It would be, but there are, I mean, sports are seasonal.
Yeah.
And so let's be
Agreed.
honest, there is an off-season in
And there's
which.
going to be dances when they need to be there.
Correct.
That, yeah, I got it. It's
Correct,
cool.
correct.
Just want to make sure. Yep.
And I think just on the assistant principal side, as you know, at in our high schools, there are many events that go on. I think probably the average administrators, there's 30 probably days that they have. When I say days, as in scheduled events that they've got to be there supervising. So if you think about that,
Yeah.
that's quite a bit for the assistant principal and the principal. And certainly that can lead to a lot of burnout when, and needing some help. And I think that's where some of the advocacy of the deans to help support,
Okay, so
especially
just
when you got larger events too.
clarification, say that again, because you stated, so our assistant principals help
So they have
and
right.
assist.
So they have a schedule.
Uh-huh.
So all the events that take place on all of our campuses,
Mm-hmm.
there has to be an administrator or 2 assigned to every one of those events,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that students are supervised and so forth. So just on an average, if I'm assistant principal A at the high school, I might have 30
Events.
duty events throughout the course of the year. And they're compensated as an assistant principal, and that's part of their job. But that's a lot of events. Yeah.
And then what you're saying, deans help assist with that, that matter, that
And
calendar.
I think that's where what we're finding, especially when you get, football events that might be, there's a larger crowd, that we've got safety and security. It just depends on the event.
Away games as well. I mean, they
Yeah,
work
for
that
sure.
dynamic with Coach Ballon so that if we've got a volleyball game in Springdale, football game here, and I mean, we go all over the place. And it's like ants leaving the ant pile. We're all over the state participating in things.
The only other position that we don't currently have is an auditorium manager of the theater department, and most districts have that position and pay for that. So that's something that we added there as well.
And without naming names, this individual is currently taking care of that role,
Right.
and
But
is
not
he
getting-
or she receiving the stipend?
No,
Okay.
nothing.
Okay, just for clarification, I like these index. I've already ran the numbers. It's really simple and easy. But we're still talking about the index is tied to step 1 of the salary schedule, right? It's not going to be tied to the person where they're at on the salary schedule.
No, ma'am. So the only thing I would want clarity on from the board is that if we want different indexes based on experience, like what I said, that 1 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 plus, If that's what the board would like to see, or you would like to see both options, we can have that conversation.
And is that more for the athletic side? Is that more relevant for athletic or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is if you bring somebody in with a plethora of experience in forensics or, I mean, in
Well, a
debate.
dance teacher that's been there
dance
25
teacher,
years, I mean,
That's still athletics, but, I mean, you know what
Oh,
I'm
well.
saying, like walking down that path of
Chess.
any of those individuals, yes, of course.
esports.
Esports, any of these things, like there is a knowledge base and experience that we have the ability to consider and compensate for, but I would just like us to put a system in place that makes sense and we don't have to touch anymore. Like this is where we are, this is competitive. Going forward, we're going to give raises so that we remain competitive in all aspects. And so what that looks like, that's the will of the board. We can do it any which way you guys would like. We can give you two different versions with that growth or with just the standard flat fee, but I want to move to the index base, not rewarding extra days outside of the bounds of what is included in the index.
That's fair. I get it. Yep,
And I like that.
yep, I'm good with that too. Okay, so hypothetically, Brian, if we base this on 50,000, can you run some numbers? And then, here's my concern, that other numbers is such a variable because it can be, I guess, go with the highest salary amount that we have.
What
That's
we-
gonna be, I know, I'm trying to think.
Ms.
it through
Wonkum,
before I opened my
what we
mouth.
normally do is,
Uh-huh.
well, you actually won't have to do that.
Okay,
And the reason why is you're not going to base the index off of the salary schedule. You're just basing it off of one box.
Well, she's saying give them both options.
yeah, I wanted both
what we could
options
do-
to see, because, okay, so in my mind, I'm already big picture. I already know enrollment's down, already know we've got to cut this, already know that we've got to cut this. I want to value our teachers. We haven't given raises in quite some time, we haven't touched the stipend schedule in years, and I will take the blame for that, because I remember being in that room and yelling at that individual saying, don't you bring this before the board again, because of the stupidity that was going on at the time. I will own that every day, any day. You can put it in the paper. I get it. But on the flip side, I do want our teachers to be valued. And as much as I love them, I can hug you and kiss you and say you thank you, but at the end of the day, that doesn't help you pay your mortgage. And so I do want to show value, but again, as a board member, and I am for all students and all teachers and all of my taxpayers here, I have to make sure, big picture, that we can afford it. And so in order for us to afford it, I need to make sure the numbers are aligning. And again, I'm thinking decline this, decline this, decline this, and then I'm wanting to add this. So at this point, I'm thinking, all right, who am I cutting? Where am I cutting? What are we giving away? What are we doing without? So I'm just, again, big picture already on these numbers, because I've been looking at this for weeks, Sarah, weeks. And I'm trying to figure out how we can make this happen. I want this, but at the same time, I need to know how we can afford it, and I need to know that we are not going to take food out of a child's mouth, if you will, hypothetically, okay?
What we can do is we can do the calculation based off of range 1, step 1.
Okay.
But then we can also come over to the option 2 and give you a range. So range 1, step 1, and then range 9, step 23.
Are you asking for that?
We could give you, so you'd know a minimum and a maximum and know that it would fall within that
That's where
range.
I'm at, the minimum and the maximum in between, because if we do in between the minimum and the maximum, again, how are we gonna afford it?
Well, that's
So
what
we-
I mean,
Well-
at this point, I'm saying we just stay in box 1, period, for
That's-
stipends, and then we don't have to worry about it, and if our enrollment goes up, we can readdress it if we wanna change to a different box.
Is that what you want to do?
Because there's no
Is that what
point in running numbers higher than what we got here.
Right.
Cause we're worried about what we got right here, which.
Which
this
is,
looks like
which is
about-
box 1.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is box
Yeah.
1.
Yes.
I
So
just wanna
I
know,
don't see any
Keep it
reason.
I just wanna know bottom line.
So
Correct.
this one looks like about a $7,000 increase for, non-athletics, assuming that there's no extra days for the band directors If there's extra days for the band directors, I don't know how, it may not be that much.
I guess what I'm looking at is this, but without the days, because that's what you were talking about, is getting rid of
So-
the days.
Yes,
So I want to see what it looks like without the days.
At last calculation, Ms. Temple and Dr. Redis, is, I wanted to say for the non-athletic adjustments, it was around $60,000-$70,000. That's where my headspace was in regards to everything. If we just went with what we had, or $90,000, okay, so it's at the very bottom.
Oh, that's total additional, that's not the total cost?
That's total additional cost.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
And so,
Show me your work.
But
Well-
that's
But
without,
there's some other discussion too that brings in an extra 21,000 to this mix that we didn't have, so.
and this is the non-athletic. There is a significant cost to the athletic. We've already met, we've already discussed. Dr. Paluski has been, in the loop about these conversations, but we know we can't come before the board and ask for the total package deal. We know that. And so there would have to be a phase-in mechanism of this where, think about enrollment, our growth within our foundation funding and state funding and all of these different pieces. There's money, as we are able to give raises, going forward with the increase in the student value in North Little Rock for the state. We, as a team, would have to pass a comprehensive plan saying this is future looking, this is what we're going to want to do, and then we would have to phase it in. And so every time a raise comes up, we would just include this phase one piece in that raise that's taken right off the top, but now these things are fixed. And then we wait for phase two, and we fix. And we wait for phase three. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I agree with that. I was still looking at this. We have multiple people with multiple stipends.
Yes, ma'am. So if you will recall.
With multiple jobs.
If you will recall with what we did this year and pivoted with the board whenever Coach Ballon came and did his needs assessment and spoke to everybody, what has happened in the past is individuals have been paid off the salary schedule in some form or fashion, which has created an inequity and things like that. We needed some help in athletics immediately. And so Coach Ballon came and presented, we had that conversation. In order to get individuals in spots to support, we used our current salary schedule. We coupled that with the staff whenever we hired them in these positions, so they knew that we were going to come back in this conversation and fix things. So they've already been prepped, correct, Coach? Yep. So anybody that has been, we added a coach here, added a coach there, but we only had the stipend schedule to work off of that we have right now. And so that's why we are where we are, Ms. Temple.
But there are people that do, for example, like coach, you might coach 2 or even 3 sports. Well, that's 3 separate stipends, but your days don't change. So, for example, like we added bowling this year. Well, that's just a $2,000 stipend. So that's all it costs the district to have a whole bowling team. We didn't have to hire anybody. We didn't have to give them any extra days. That person was already getting that stuff through a different. It was just a small addition to be able to add. So you would see that person on here more than one time. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, I was looking at the non-athletics, but I was just, it just hit me that, wow, there's some of these look like they have 2 or 3.
And
Yeah.
you're gonna have that in all the phases because some people do more than 1 or 2 jobs.
They wear many hats.
And then you got people that also drive a bus to these things.
Correct.
Yeah, we have a drama person who is the auditorium manager, the drama person, a head tennis coach, and a head soccer coach. And it's 4 roles, so it gets 4 stipends.
Okay, all right.
so looking at
And
this sheet,
teaching.
I'm sorry.
PTO for him, because if you had to play 4 different salaries, that would be big difference.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Makes sense.
Okay.
So this total additional cost still goes back to my question, is that with days or without
No.
days?
No days.
So,
What you're looking at right now is we have taken the value of those days and added them in. So
Gotcha.
if we think this middle school band director position is worth $4,365, then we need to adjust and take those days away and come up with the index to reflect $4,400.
You're-
That amount, gotcha.
everybody's going to be on a 190-day contract. But the
Gotcha.
expectation is if you apply for a stipend position, this is the work. The Saturday last weekend, the Saturday this weekend, the concerts, the regionals, this is the work.
Gotcha.
And so that value will cover that.
Okay. How is that monitored? I know in the past that maybe someone's had a stipend and they weren't doing, I mean, how is this monitored
It's a good question.
through HR and accounting to make sure we're not paying someone who isn't doing the work?
Position control. So we have cleaned up all of these individual pieces, but not a stipend, not a position, not anything is posted without me being in the room, Dr. Paluski being in the room, Dr. Hooper being in the room, the appropriate executive director, and Brian Brown.
I think you're also asking, how do we make sure they're doing their job?
I would
Yes.
say
That would
integrity.
go to the principal or
The
athletic
direct
director,
supervisor.
their immediate supervisor. So if he has somebody hired as a coach and they're not performing their job, that would be his responsibility to address that. Or if you have a club sponsor at the high school hired but not meeting with the chess group, that's the high school principal's job to address that with the employee.
I will also say, since I've arrived, we have found individuals that were getting a stipend that were not producing the work. And if you remember, Mr. Smith, we eliminated that immediately upon knowing about it, which is also why we have Mr. Rucker in Mr. Smith's shop doing individual employee meetings to make sure your contract's correct, what you're doing. So we do have now another double mechanism in making sure that if anything needs to get corrected, that it will be.
I would say our parents too, because I hear a lot from our parents as if someone's not performing to their
Capacity.
expectations,
They'll
their
let you know.
capacity. Parents talk. Parents will call us board members, be like, "Did you know Miss Sarah told me no?"
It's a big, small town.
It is a big, small town.
It's a big small town.
And Coach Ballon, since taking over, I mean, he's had a large basketball to wrap his hands around. But part of that mechanism that he's been working with my office is evaluating separately. So you are going to, with this piece, you are now going to have a teacher evaluation through tests, and there's going to be a mechanism through coach's office in regards to the stipend piece of their position.
Okay. All right, then I have one more question. I don't know who will answer this, but it has to do with athletics. If we have some that are overpaid on a stipend, are we cleaning that up on this round? I mean, when we get to this point, we're cleaning up if it's too much, if it's too little, correct?
The new stipend values will be, they have the ability to be effective immediately based on learns and what was passed. If the board so chose, I would suggest us making it the following year to allow individuals to evaluate where they would fall on the stipend, and then if they felt like they needed to acquire another position or something like that, then there wouldn't be a mid-year severing of what they have already agreed to and assigned. But to answer your question, whatever the new stipends are, if you would pass them forward thinking that next year and that next contract cycle, that would be the stipend. So whether it's an increase, decrease, whatever, that's the stipend.
So I understand your question. If we have any coaches that currently make more than what we would recommend, would that be adjusted?
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't think we're gonna find that. Not in what we're comparing. There may be, I think there was 2 that were close out of all of our coaches.
Yeah, I think we have one position.
Everybody else is significantly lower than our competition. So, yeah, I don't want, maybe 1 or 2. That would be maybe close to that, but everybody else is gonna be, we're not gonna find that very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
anything that was adjusted or needed to be adjusted would, I mean, we're talking dollars on a 24 pay period check. I mean, if we're being comparable is what I'm trying to say. If you, for some reason, want to lower somebody's salary by $500 because they're overpaid $500 by comparison, you have the ability to do that, but it works out to nothing. I mean, I don't want to say nothing, but
Or
it's
13,000,
negligible. Pardon me?
or 13,000.
Yeah, so that, I mean, that would be part of the, like, if we're gonna use this model's what we're gonna use. So for 99% of them, it more than likely will be an increase.
Okay.
If that's not the case, that's obviously a conversation, and that's, I mean, it's been, I've been here, I think, 18 years, and that's the same thing I started when I was at Ridge Road. That's the same, that I remember, was the same amount of money. So that was in 2007. So I don't even know how long before that. So we're reviewing it, and we're using a gold standard, in our opinion, at least in the athletic world. Bryant right now is the gold standard. And so if we want to be the gold standard as well, we want to be competitive. I think that's what we look at, and that's kind of what that's why we chose them. So yes, but if that would all be addressed at the same time.
Yes, and whether it is a increase or a decrease, the conversation is the same from me. This is the new past stipend schedule. This is where you will be placed on your 25-26 contract.
So coming back for Bryant to us, that's a 2,000 student difference. And yeah, we want to grow, absolutely, but I'm just thinking
It is,
the
but
standard.
Bryant has 80 coaches.
And we have 39. Or
Well, we
did
added
have
some, so
39.
we're at 50. So there's your difference, though. We have 30 less. No, I'm just saying 20, 30 less coaches
Right.
times that amount of money. That is the difference in 2,000 less kids, or whatever
That's right.
the difference is.
That's right.
But the work for the coach-to-coach comparison is the
It's
same.
the same.
It's just, for example, football, they may have 13 coaches and we have 9 paid coaches.
Okay.
And can I add, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but Bryant does something that I don't know that is necessarily something that we would have to do that would save us $100,000.
Where you at? Proposed?
I'm trying to look. It's proposed athletic. I'm trying to see if I'm on the right thing. At the very bottom, it's hard because this is. It says they do what's called an off-season index,
Mr.
which
Riddle,
is
can you minimize
column D.
or zoom out so that we can see more of the?
Hold on, I'm going to try to hide these 3. Oh wait, no, I'm not trying to delete. I'm just trying to hide. View, hide,
Go to Zoom right there.
zoom.
Yeah, that's where we're at.
Click on
Okay. If you
glad you
look at
understand
that
what
column D that says off-season index, what they did right there was they said, if you're not currently in your season, you're still coaching, but you're in off-season, so we're going to pay you more for that. I don't know that anybody expects that. So, like, if we took off the off-season index from everybody, that's $107,000. So,
That little trying to delete rows.
I know.
Does that make sense what she was saying?
I'm trying to follow right now.
Okay.
That column, off-season index and off-season value. So that's like everybody who's a coach gets an additional $1,150 when they're not in season because they still have practices. Like my husband still stays till 6 o'clock every night, even though he's not in season right now. He still works an extra 2 hours a day. So they're just saying, we value that, we appreciate that, we're going to give that a number of $1,150.
But if we didn't, but we don't do that currently.
We don't do that, and
So that's
Not everybody does that.
$100,000 right there in compare that we would
In comparison.
we could kind of say, you know what, that would be definitely something we could sacrifice to do different than what they're doing. So yeah, we use them as kind of the baseline, but that's $100,000 right there that we
that's a quarter of the money we need
that we could
to
say,
make
you know
that
what,
happen.
Let's
not do that.
maybe
not
not.
do
Let's
that.
maybe,
Right.
maybe we're not there right now.
That's just an easy thing that you could go, okay, we could knock that out. And we
Alright.
could afford this other stuff, you know.
So I can say, I love the index. That's wonderful. It's great. But probably we do need present it to us how we could phase it in. Because I think we're all in agreement, we cannot afford to do it all right now.
Well then, okay, I agree with that statement, but then it's almost like, how do you phase it in? Who gets the first phase? Who gets the second phase? I mean, are we putting their names in a hat and then we're drawing? I
No.
mean, that's,
No, ma'am. And I would love any guidance you have to give in regards to this, but it's just like any other conversation, is there's not really a method. If the board would allow a meeting of the minds within the individuals that sit with these hats on their head, I mean, coming up with, I think the things that need to be addressed the most are the things that should be handled first, but there is no recipe to define what that is. That would just be a conversation amongst the leaders and the exec team, and ultimately, Dr. Paluski would have to make a firm decision with the board's input to bring to you to approve.
And I'll just add to help my sanity, because I get a lot of people coming at me. If we start choosing one group over another and not giving the same percentage amount at the same time, we're going to have a big morale problem.
I think
That's why I was
percentage at the same
thinking the
time.
percentage.
Yeah.
the
I would
3
start with say,
percentages.
let's just
We
do,
know where we want to
say
get
30% across the board.
Yeah.
We're trying to get you here, but we're going to get
Right.
here first, and then we'll get
Phase
here
1
next.
is 0 point something percent. Phase 2 is this percent, and then we get to phase 3, which this is where we're trying to get to.
20%
Yeah.
for 5 years.
Yeah.
But I think but where we would want to start is that we wouldn't want to go backwards. You know, like we would have to find that baseline of what's the percentage where we're at right now to where we're going to get to. Is it are we at 60% of where we ultimately want to be? Then in my opinion, we got to at least start there. So what we don't want to do is say we're going to start at 20%, and now the value of our coaches is it's going
No.
to take years to
It
get
would
to
be,
it.
no.
It would just be 20% of the,
20%
of the raise,
Okay.
of the increase,
Okay.
not of the
So we
whole.
find the value, the difference in
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
that.
So
I like that.
if we were gonna give a coach $5,000, then
You get,
he'll get 1,000.
1,000 a
this
year.
2,000 the next year, 3,000 the year after that.
So would the board be open to, I understand exactly what everybody is saying. I truly do, but there are positions on the stipend schedule. For example, choir has been brought to our attention. There is a $3,000 difference between what our choir director makes versus anybody else that we have done a comparison to. So during this first round, would the board be open to hearing some adjustments beyond that, or is the guidance the exact same the whole way?
there are some severe discrepancies.
I
There
would say
are.
severe discrepancies
There are.
should be looked at.
Looked at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So I'll just show you this one real quick. And it's to be honest, it's the only one that truly stands out as like, whoa, that's not right.
Correct.
teachers, I knew she was going there.
Sorry, I got a lot of things here. Our dance troupe is also another one that's a really low one. So $900. Conway makes $4,100. Bryant $5,850. Cabot $1,500. Jonesboro $7,000. Fayetteville $7,547 for an average of $5,200, and ours makes $900.
Yeah, that's a huge
Can't-
discrepancy.
Yeah.
Can you bring them up to, if we're gonna do increases for 5 years, you don't wanna give them all of it at one time? You
No,
wanna
ma'am.
take them up to that point?
I would say something that says, we understand this is the situation, let's get you here, and then you will walk with the rest of the individuals. But we would point that out in whatever we bring back to the board, is that this is the formula we use,
Right.
this is how we're getting there, this is the cost. We would also like feedback about this specific position and bringing it up to here to then continue walking down the remaining 80% or phases or whatever it is.
Yes, I'd like to see your recommendation on how we can do that, because I know there's some in the athletic side too, that there's a larger discrepancy.
Yep.
So I think that would be the next step to move forward.
So who can we task to do that? Because Sarah Stonehouse has done a lot.
So let's look at our math department. Who do we have in math that understands?
I think the finance department might be able to take it on. So, what I would like to see is if we're in agreement, we need to look at the index system. I'd like to take everything as it is, convert it to an index system, and move everybody to the index system. Then step out our implementation of growing the index. So we'll look at each position and say, here's where they go right now. It costs the district no money. We'll do that comparison and say, implementation, no cost to the district. So that takes the value of their additional days and stipend, convert that to an index number. Here's where we start. So everybody starts where it costs the district nothing.
Right.
Then
I agree.
we can say, identify who's going to be in phase one, and then grow that index. Here's going to be phase two. And it may be phase one, maybe some of the bigger discrepancy areas that haven't been addressed, or where there is no stipend, where there needs to be a stipend. Those may be phase one. We may be able to
I like
do
that.
something else, or maybe grow everybody at a rate that we can afford for year one, year two, year three. Have a combination of that. But
Okay.
if we're in agreement, we're going to index, then we'll go that route.
Brian,
Look for an implementation.
they're trying to hear you. People on line can't hear you. Sorry.
Okay, got you. Well, we'll start with converting everything to an index at the current value, and then work on an implementation phase of who will be phase one, how do we grow that? Who will be phase two, how do we grow that? And we'll grow the index. So
Okay.
convert everybody, index, that's what I would
I think
propose
that's
we
a
look at doing.
Great idea.
Because then we can compare the index they currently have to the index
Then we're trying
that
to
we
Where
want
we're
to,
trying to go.
where we're trying to go.
And we'll look at a phase-in, period and what that looks like. So phase one, phase two, phase three, and everybody gets converted up initially, so you don't have a double system where we keep people on a flat stipend and a days. And
Right.
that would be,
That's
from
step
an
one.
accounting standpoint,
Yeah.
that would be a hard thing to manage.
Yes.
That would be a
Okay.
manual management of that, so
Is
I'd like
there
to just.
is there a mathematical way to analyze and to figure out where our biggest discrepancies are? I mean, obviously the people who aren't currently getting anything would be fit in that first category, but is there a way that we can plug a formula in to figure out who our biggest?
Sure, we could look at the discrepancies and see the larger ones and see if we can get them in a phase one, and then we don't phase in 100%, maybe we don't phase in 100% of that over time. We phase it in 20% over 5 years. So we'll look at a step system in that. So
Okay.
there's multiple ways to look at it. I just think our base would be take where we are, convert it to that starting index
Right.
where it costs the district nothing, but we get to an index system.
Right.
And then we'll decide what will be phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many phases we look at.
Okay.
And naturally within that, if we did a 20%, 20%, 20%, let's say everybody over 5 phases, the individuals that there is the most discrepancy would receive the most benefit at each one of those 20%. And so we can still start and adjust a couple things that might need to be immediately adjusted, but we can work on getting there.
And I really want the finance department to do a lot of digging with these numbers as well, because I haven't had somebody really with a microscope who knows what they're doing to really look at some of the stuff that I've done, because there are some huge decisions. Even I put in here with drama. Drama is one of those areas that they felt very strongly that things needed to be a certain salary, and that did not line up with what I could find in terms of my research online. And I was trying to figure out how different schools do drama, and what I learned was it's a little bit like athletics, that sometimes they get paid hourly rates in addition to a stipend. Sometimes they get days. Like it's very hard to read. Some things are cut and dry. I can look at chess, and chess looks like chess. Doesn't matter what district you're at. But like if you look at drama, say in Conway, or television, it may say drama vocal coach, drama production manager, drama orchestra, drama, and they've got like 6 or 7 different things. Well, and if we don't run it that particular way, it's hard to make a fair comparison. So like I went ahead and just put in the amounts that on drama that our staff said that they felt like was a fair thing to do. That is not something that I found research to back up, but I might be able to find research if I did as much digging as I did trying to call Bryant and find out what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And I had to have multiple conversations with Bryant to figure out what those things meant. Does that make sense? Like,
Well,
there's so many specifics.
One thing too, like the requirements may be different as well. For example,
True.
our dance team doesn't travel; they only do home games, so that's a different than
Right.
our cheer team because
That's
they
right.
do travel.
That's right.
Because not all schools have enough room for dance teams, so there are some requirements as well that will factor into.
Right.
those
And so I went ahead and left those notes on this particular sheet that staff told me about, and I take them at their word. Like musical production, they put down that they work 200 hours. Fall show production, 200 hours. Holiday dance concert, 20 hours. Spring dance concert, 20 hours. They even put down that forensics and debate stipend, they estimated 205 hours. Like they broke it down like to what they really feel like the amount of work that they put in. So I wanted to leave that on there because I don't want to make a decision that's not really fair to them. And I want other people to be in that conversation. I don't want to suggest I put a number on here, but that I put the number they gave me, and I want some other people to really dive into that and see if that's a fair number.
And I'll say this too, Ms. Stumpinhouse has kind of walked this dog for a while. She's looped in everybody. We've all collaborated and done the best we could. At this point, with what's being presented to the board, what's going to be uploaded on board docs, I encourage any staff members that have input that can be backed by data, or they want to communicate with my office on the who, what, when, where, and why that hasn't been communicated to Ms. Stumpinhouse or the stipend committee as we've met and we've asked. We've got individuals in regards to some specifics. I think if there's a justification, we should be able to point to the justification of the why, whether that's embedded in another district or whether that's embedded in research. And so that's my goal, to try to bring something back that makes physical sense, but is also justifiable from a comparison sake. And so anybody that wants to provide feedback, either to my office, Brian's office, Ms. Stumpinhouse, we're more than welcome to.
I just have one question. Are they saying that the 200 hours is aside from their day-to-day?
Mm-hmm. That would be additional, in addition to their contract.
So hypothetically breaking that down, that's say 2 hours of practice time, Monday through Thursday. 2 times 4 is 8, and then there's going to be weeks into that, and that's just one production in my mind thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do 2 productions because we do a fall and a spring.
But they have
And-
one, so they got 400 hours for 2 productions.
Yes.
Right. And one of the schools I found, I think it was Bryant, they get paid a stipend for the fall production and a stipend for the spring production. So they get $3,000 for each, whereas our people only get paid $3,000 total for everything.
Okay, so my follow-up question for you or Brian, one, so ticket sales, does that help go into these stipends for that individual or these policies? So where did the ticket sales go for?
Goes to the program, back into the program for set building, materials, costumes. I mean, any of those types of things, is that we want all of our programs to be self-sustaining as much as they can be, but I don't think that is the case. I mean, band is a very expensive thing for any district to have, and instruments, maintenance, all of those things. And so there are devotions within the budget that are allocated beyond what that brings in, but those ticket sales, those concession things of that nature, all of that kind of eases the burden on the operating budget to have to contribute so much. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, but to answer your question directly, the ticket sales go into a Fund 7 account for drama that they decide how they spend. So the ticket sales does not fund salary or stipends for employees.
Okay, so let's even go a little step further. How are we paying these stipends right now? Out of what bucket do we pay stipends? Are there multiple buckets? Is there one bucket?
Most of them are paid out of operating.
Okay, so operating.
Most are paid out of operating.
So-
There may be an exception. There may be an exception here or there, but most of them are paid out of operating.
So, like, for example, our Perkins coordinator, that is paid out of the Perkins grant
Right.
whenever we employ an individual that is under that
Which we don't
stipend,
have right now.
which we don't have at the moment. Yes, ma'am.
So is there currently a stipend committee? Or is that something that you
Yes, ma'am.
bring together? So there is a stipend committee.
For
So some of these things,
2 years, 3 years, there's been since Gary Davis was in Coach Ballon's position. We have had a stipend committee, and we have been wrapping our hands around this basketball. Now, it's one of those things that administration leaves, or certain individuals that have skin in the game might not be here anymore, and so things have shifted. But it is something, since I have been here, since 2020, that I have been trying to get to this point and elicit help. And I couldn't have, I'll say it 1,000 different ways, between Dr. Paluski, Ms. Stumpenhouse, all of the LPPC that I have right now. I mean, it's like we've been working towards getting that committee in a position so that we can have these conversations quickly and effectively and justify it, so that we can bring something to the board with research that's fact-driven. And so, just taking a long time.
these things, for example, the drama department, those are those things that your office, Brian, can have a closer look? Because you said that there were so many different descriptions at other schools that it's hard to come up with a number of what other schools are doing, exactly how it compares to ours. And then the stipend committee looks at that. I mean, will the stipend committee take a look at all of these things before you would present something back to us, or how does that work?
Yes, ma'am. So the stipend committee is, I mean, Ms. Stumpenhouse has really, like I said, taken the bull by the horns and done a great deal of the work. And I think,
She is the stipend committee.
well,
The stipend committee.
well, in all fairness,
One of.
we have had a committee, but I believe Ms. Stumpenhouse will agree with me and say that whenever there's too many chiefs and you're trying to
true.
get something done
That is
like
true.
this with the data on a sheet,
You're gonna have some Indians.
she was almost like,
You have
let
to,
me go,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to bring something to the board, get their feedback, then I'm going to bring this back with the board's feedback, and then it'll go to the LPPC as a rough draft and say, okay, everybody's on board with this plan. We'll go Dr. Paluski, we'll have that conversation. Once he says, yes, go forth, board workshop, our normal process. And so,
Well, I just hope that special attention goes to these areas like the choir that you were talking about, drama, some of the coaching positions, those that have those huge discrepancies. I hope that
one of the
That can
reasons
be-
why I went ahead and put what they asked for in drama was because I multiplied their 440 hours times $25 an hour, and that was an $11,000 stipend.
Right,
So I
I
thought
saw that.
6,000 was real fair.
and Ms. Yaneshka out of my office, since your guys' reorganization of my department, I mean, she's the HR person over compensation and benefits. And some of those individuals that are specific questions we have that we don't have a clear answer, she can walk down that process as well of contacting other districts, seeing if there's any further information out there, and even looking beyond just our state if we have other questions, so that we can just bring you something to say, this is how we ended up where we ended up.
okay.
I'd like to circle back for a second. Come back to your non-athletics, the one that you printed out for us. That's all in front of us, just for clarifications. I'm going to come down to band director 9 through 10, band director 9 through 10. Everyone see where we're at? So these two individuals actually teach at the middle school. Those are the band directors at the middle school campus. So this stipend is helping compensate their work with the high school band at the Saturday marching contest, at the next Saturday marching contest, and the concerts that we have and host and whatnot. So just for clarification, that's what I'm looking at, correct?
Yes, ma'am. So it's just like, go down the history of athletics. We used to have a 9th grade coach. We used to have 9th grade assistant coaches. We used to have varsity coaches, things like that. Now they are lumped in as a varsity coach for that particular sport, in which those grade bands fall underneath that work. And so the head coach is over the program, and normally that's 7 through 12 in our big sports and stuff like that. So the middle school all falls up underneath them, but whenever you say varsity coach, now we are a 9 through 12 varsity school, where we used to be 9 and 10 and 11 and 12. And so the conversation is to put something out that is equitable and backed, that addresses the work. We need you here for this sport doing this work, and that those directives are going to come from Coach Milan down to his head coaches to use the staff to accomplish what is best for kids.
Absolutely, and that's what kind of where I'm at, because my train of thought is everything and anything that we do at the 6th grade campus, 7th and 8th grade campus, affects our 9th grade campus, if you will. Because from us building at the 6th and 7th and 8th and building that foundation, we are just building our teams to be better, whether that is band, whether that is chess, whether that is football, basketball, whatever that means. And so we did just hire, I'm going to use the word a lot of 9th grade coaches and assistant coaches to help build that foundation. So we are building towards the growth of enrollment. We are building towards the growth of the athletic complex that we want and wishing and hoping and praying for, that we desire. So, okay, just putting that on record.
Varsity coaches that have been assigned to 9th grade. That is how our current salary schedule reads.
Fair. Fair. It's a little bit of a Pandora's box.
I am so glad we're doing this. Obviously, y'all have stated the case of how long it's been since we've done anything like this. And I just want to thank all of the people that do these extra things, and we certainly want to compensate them properly. It may take us the next few months to get this to come together, right, and a couple of more meetings, but then it would be in place for next year to get us started towards that goal.
And I think Coach Milan has said it best with his taking over and his conversations with the coaches and everything. If this board is willing to pass something that is comprehensive and a phased plan, I think everybody can get behind that. I mean, just the fact that we are forward thinking and our staff knows that we're doing this is the plan, this has been approved, and it's just naturally going to happen as the budget allows. And so what we are telling everybody is that this will be phased in as we are able to give raises, and that is something that we try to do every year, if not every other year, something like that. Learns has been a conversation with that, but we're getting back to that, and we're actively working on that in my department and Brian's department as we speak.
And I just would like to say publicly that if anyone gets a hold of all this information and you feel like you have not been adequately represented in what you feel is fair, please contact me and let me know so that we can work on it. This is a working document.
That's fair. That's good.
Okay, so to summarize, we like the index, and you're going to take this index and make it current to what we have going on right now, and then show us ways that we can implement it.
The phase in. Yes, ma'am.
All right. And then I just have one question. I didn't see this earlier. What is the parent involvement facility, I guess, that on the bottom of the
Parent,
first page?
yeah.
What is that? I didn't
It's
see
the
it.
parent involvement facilitator.
That's the point of contact at the campus, that has to do with things like family night. That it really is a stipend that is defined at the building level as far as what they're helping with and what they're doing. But that's the type of work that they're doing, is they might help with the social media piece that is associated with the school website. They might manage the calendar that's put out at the school-based piece that has all the different events that are happening. They might help craft emails and stuff like that. And so, I mean, it's kind of like having the conversation about a department chair. A department chair's work's going to vary from campus to campus. I mean, there's an umbrella of what they're doing, but campus to campus or department to department is there's
We're-
different word.
We're actually required to have a licensed person
Correct.
at each campus. So a licensed teacher at each campus named as a parent facilitator.
Okay, all right.
And then they have some assigned duties to them, and there's also an assigned stipend for
Okay.
that work as well.
Does that money come out of a different pot besides operational? I don't know, I was thinking that was
No,
federal money.
I don't think
No?
so. I think it's out of operating.
I
So-
just,
Go ahead.
I just have one question. So what you're bringing back to us, will it include like the department chairs, esports, the wishes?
I'm going to try to hit the nail on the head. And so I'm going to try to get something that is as complete as possible, but just as the board, please grant grace if there needs to be changes. I think this is even something that we might need to either visit again in this format or provide a time so board members can have their individual questions answered about the specifics once we come up with a rough draft. But it will be a working rough draft all the way up until the point Dr. Paluski, the PPC, and you all approve.
Okay.
So we'll figure it out.
I do have a question from the galley, asking me if phase one can happen before next school year, if we can do phase one this year.
How would that work on contracts? Because we'd have to revise.
It would be my recommendation that we avoid that, based on the work that is associated for finance, HR, the board, everybody else in order to do that, and then the budget being set and the conversations. This will give all of our departments the ability to forward plan
Yeah.
and to communicate what we're going to do. But again, Dr. Paluski's recommendation, your guys' approval, whatever you would like to see done.
Well, I would say if we were going to do phase one with the ones that need to be tweaked immediately, I would consider looking at that this year, because that's just gonna be a handful.
That's right.
So that would be something that, depending on what the numbers show, I think, would you agree that's something that wouldn't be too much for HR or accounting, that we could look at that this year and then
It's a small amount.
I mean,
Correct, for next year? Let's
start
say that
doing the increases, the index increases after that?
So are you talking about,
The
yeah,
severe
The
discrepancies.
severe
And
discrepancies.
the ones that don't have a stipend at all. Could
Yeah.
we go ahead and get those done? That's just a handful of people.
Does that require issuing a new contract?
it would. Yes, ma'am. I mean, anytime money is adjusted, you reissue a contract under the appropriate amount. And, you know, generally, in years past, the LPPC, or, excuse me, not the LPPC, the staff has had to vote on any sort of change that went into effect the same year that you are changing that, because of all the nuances that are associated with the law, but Learns repealed all that. And so now, if the board passes it immediately, and that's what we're doing, then the LPPC is viewed as that piece of the puzzle, so you don't have to do a staff vote now. And so, it's easier now to do it that way, but,
It still would be quite a bit of work to change.
it's not that. I think it just goes back to the conversation of now we're having to justify why this and not that. And
I
I
agree.
understand that is a conversation, but I think it's easier for everybody to swallow if there's something done for all, even though if that is not the exact same thing, everybody everybody sees those pieces and the different steps that are associated with it. But we can do it any which way the board desires.
Yeah. Well, let's just see what Mr. Brown brings us.
Sounds great.
I'd like to say, just on behalf of the athletic department, as a parent, former coach and everything, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Paluski, the support that he's given me since the day I walked into this position, and you guys for having these conversations on behalf of athletics and the non-athletics. But in my shop, you know, just having this conversation is a step in the right direction. For culture building, for being, you know, more competitive, for being able to do what's best for our kids. So just from my area, I just wanted to come out and publicly say thank you to you guys for that support and being willing to talk about these things and see if there's anything we can do, because ultimately it's going to affect our students. And
Yeah.
so I did want to say that. So
Thank you, Coach.
But I do know our staff will really appreciate it if we could come through with something this year. I'll just throw that out there. If there is any funds, then it would go a long way, because people are tired of talk. That's what I've heard over and over again. Tired of talking.
Well, I know a lot of teachers have said to me, when are we getting a raise? Are we getting anything this year? So when will that discussion occur?
Well, the bonus, I've had people come to me, what happened to the bonus, where'd it go? And yes, along the same
Right,
lines.
so remember that just to clarify, so the bonus had gone away with Esser. There's only one school, which is 7th Street Elementary School, that receives a retention stipend. They got that last year through Esser. This year, we talk about stipend, that's entitled to federal funds, so that would be the only one that's tied to that. We're working every single Tuesday, all day, on the budget. You've gone over the budget. We know we're in declining enrollment is caught up with us. We're in a $2.6 million deficit. We put a reorganization on hold at $1.5 million. And our CEP, which is our calculation of federal funds, has changed, and that's another $1 million. So our first thing is making sure that we're taking the steps to make sure that we're going to balance our budget. And we also want to take care of our employees as well. Don't forget that the Board of Education, I think as soon as I got here, you still have the right and the ability to take some money out of the building fund and give a one-time bonus. That's at your purview. We're also at a time where we're trying to increase our building fund for our building projects, but you do have that at your disposal. And so we're going to have to make some difficult decisions. And I thank Ms. Stumpenhouse for, again, all the work that you've done and your collaboration with Mr. Smith and Mr. Brown and Coach Ballon and our teachers. And we want to take care of our teachers, and we want to fix this stipend issue. I think it's been going on maybe since the beginning of time when the school district started, but we're here, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing to be at this point where we can come to you with a plan of an index and see what can we do in order to move forward. So we're just going to have to balance that out and make some decisions, but know that whatever that we can do, we will do for our employees to stay, as Coach says, competitive, period.
We've got to.
Have to.
So it sounds like there are some options.
There
That
are.
could make that happen, but
and yes, and we've
much further discussion about it and looking at numbers.
yes. In fact, remember when we went through our budget process, Mr. Brown has always told us what drives contracts is the calendar. So Mr. Smith right now is working with LPPC, and we've had that conversation of getting a calendar in front of you sooner than later so that we can start the contract conversation. We want to be able to get contracts out much earlier than we have in the past. Number one, to stay competitive, to lock in our employees, but also there's a lot of pieces that are going to have to happen in the next 4 to 5 months, and that's our plan.
You are talking about, starting with the calendar and all of these conversations, you are talking about a rippling effect across our policies that will have to be adjusted conjunctively at the same time. And I mean, I'm talking policies that are at the core fabric of how we function within our operational day-to-day life. And so that's why it's so important for us to, let's get through the decision-making of the calendar. We have our charge from you in regards to this piece, and we are working on the other pieces as well, but it's going to be a big year. And that is the conversation I've had with both committees. That is the conversation Dr. Paluski is having with us as an executive team. That's the conversation Mr. Brown and Dr. Paluski have been having with you all as far as the workshops, the information, where we are, and what we need to do.
What kind of timeline do you think it'll take, Mr. Brown, to come up with indexes for all of these different stipends?
Are you
As we
creating
currently
the,
have it.
Is IT creating the algorithm for to do? Sorry,
I
didn't
could
mean
do
to
it
make a
tonight.
joke of that.
Yeah, no,
It's not hard.
I would say, once my office gets past our September 30th budget deadline with ADE, we can devote some time to it. I would say within maybe a week's time, I could take Ms. Stumpin's house spreadsheet, convert that into, a spreadsheet where we could have a baseline start, back that into what we're paying now. So an implementation point of no cost to the district, and then we can figure out how many phases we need to do, project that out, and show how each position would grow over time through the implementation phase. So I would say a couple of weeks from now, we could have something in hand.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, would it be beneficial to the board once we iron something out that we do another one of these so that we could all look and have some feedback before we try to start walking down the path of approval and all the things associated with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, for sure. I would
Yes.
also like to say, you kind of hit on it earlier, but just make sure that we have these individuals at the table during that conversation. Because, I mean, we are affecting their livelihood, and we are affecting their responsibilities. And
I
what
am
they-
willing, and I offered to go spend a day at the high school and meet with all these folks just to get their feedback and to try to work that out. Dr. St. Louis said that was fine. I didn't have the info from him yet to know who our new people were, so I would know how to schedule. But if somebody else wants to do that from the business office, that's great. I just thought I would, I had offered, I could sit there and have people come in, especially if we had a sub that could watch their room for 15 minutes and just come meet and go over what we come up with and what if they felt like that was fair or not. But certainly, I'm happy to hand that to your direction and let you do that. But I thought that would at least have somebody sit down with them one-on-one.
I just want to make sure that conversation is open to those individuals.
That's
to
right.
Make sure, and that, just like anything else, they can always reach out to us board members as well to have that conversation in addition. So.
I just thought it might be helpful since they would know my thinking as to how I got to that number. Okay. And so I had tried to get some other LPBC members to do it, and they weren't able to understand how different numbers came up. Yeah.
That sounds like a great idea for you to be at the high school. Can we make that happen?
Happy to do that.
Yeah, Dr. Paluski's been incredibly supportive to the point where we even had a work day for this, where individuals that were on the stipend committee were provided a sub if needed, and we were given an entire day to just kind of chew this off, and that was a lot of the work that got you going in regards to it. But then we quickly figured out, as I said, the too many chiefs conversation was very
It's hard.
apparent.
Not everybody knows how to do a spreadsheet. I mean, it
Well,
is what it is.
I think they would.
Yeah.
I think.
members, I'm like, how do you know?
I think it would be great if you were there, since you're the one that put this together and know it inside and out. And then if somebody at the high school, I guess, or the middle school wanted to come and speak to you.
I've tried to email each individual person and give them an opportunity to do their own research so that they could see how I was doing it. And some of them did do that and got back to me. But I think that face-to-face discussion is more valuable.
And Coach, for for quality's sake, can you make sure at a coaches meeting or something like that that you have coming up, that you elicit feedback from your individuals as well, so we can make sure that we've done both? I mean, even if it's just, hey, this is what we presented, this was the rationale, is there any feedback you need to give me in regards to this? So,
Meeting in the morning, I'll do it tomorrow.
wonderful.
So that can happen in the next week or two?
Yes.
Well, you're going to be ready in about 2 weeks, right? But they could get with people between now and then.
And we have, I mean, we have truly reached out, but you're right, one more time, let's make one more, now that everybody has heard this conversation.
Yes, yes.
Knows where our headspace is
We're
as a
headed
group.
toward index and,
Correct, let's go there and have a more specific interaction.
okay, so do we need to do another meeting like this, or does that just need to be at an information at the board meeting, or?
Well, I think what we'll do is we've got our marching orders. It might not be a bad idea to have something like this one more time so you can see it, and then we can take it to the board as an information item. Because there might be some more dialogue you want to have, or ask some more questions once we've given the index to you.
Okay,
That would
great.
be my recommendation, to do it during the week, but I work
Sounds
for
good
you,
to
and
me.
I'll do whatever you ask me to.
Coach Balon, we may also, maybe you and Mr. Smith and I could meet together one more time as well, just to make sure we don't, if anything has changed in terms of your staffing or your needs or whatever, that we want to have something more concrete that we're ready.
So I guess this would be like last call, if there's anybody out there that isn't receiving a stipend, that thinks they should be getting a stipend.
But please, before you start telling us that you deserve one, look at some of these other schools that are our size and see if they're giving a stipend for those things. Because I wanted a stipend for PBIS coach because I spent a lot of time doing that, but nobody else is doing that, so I didn't put one in.
Gotta justify it.
Right.
I do have a question for clarity. Just to make sure I'm understanding this total additional cost to district, the 90,000, that is, so 90,000 plus the 76,000, correct?
That's right.
And that's if we did all this.
Right.
Just want to make sure for my
Just on
mind.
that.
Yeah, just on this. I know, I understand. Just on this. I just want to make sure my brain and my math were of one.
And I think there is a fringe cost there too, that finance would have to give us that piece just for.
Yeah, it's 20, it's whatever number you calculate as the difference, you have to multiply that by 22.65%.
And why is that? What?
There's
Teacher
15
retirement.
For every dollar you pay an employee,
Uh-huh.
you have to pay 15% to teacher retirement, 6.2% to Social Security, 1.45% to Medicare tax. So those 15 plus 7.65% that makes up FICA is 22.65%. So every dollar you pay, there's an additional 22 cents, 22.65 cents that has to be paid in payroll taxes on that dollar.
But the next time we bring you this information, I mean, this was all for you to provide clarity. It will be, as Dr. Paluski says, the fully loaded piece. I mean, that is.
So if it's $100,000, then it would actually be $122,500.
Yes, ma'am.
That's right.
650,
625.
625.
Says the math guy.
650, sorry. 650.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riddle.